Guru Gamma's Execution Review. I've already checked out all the new executions that just came out today, July 25th at the time of this recording. I'm going to simply be telling you what I think are the top 3 best executions and what I think are the bottom 3 worst executions, along with how I would rank each faction overall in terms of just how solid their executions were on average. So, starting with the bottom 3. In third place, so, the third least worst, I'm gonna have to unfortunately give it to my man Centurion. Well, I kind of like the idea of the Et tu Brute style execution, stab in the gut. The fact that he doesn't say anything, the fact that there's no build-up, it's not really, doesn't really have any flash or pizzazz to it. It just doesn't really look that good. Maybe it would look good with a mask effect, but especially compared to some of his more bombastic executions, I find it very underwhelming. So, that's what's going to lock him into the third place. Moving on to the second place worst execution, I'm going to have to give that one, unfortunately, to another knight. That is Black Prior with Up to the Hilt. I heard the name Up to the Hilt, and I was hoping that they would literally, jam the sword, vertically up or down the character all the way to the hilt. But no, it's just a ripoff of Warden's gimmick with a shield flip on top. I mean, the backhand sort of croquet slap at the end is kind of neat. But overall, this is a fairly weak execution that doesn't even really seem to fit the, personality aesthetic of the character. So, not that I really care all that much for Vortiger anymore. But, yeah, that is definitely enough for me to call that the second worst. The first worst, the worst of the whole batch, is, in my opinion, Musha's Blazing Swallow Kick. She throws some firecrackers on the ground, kicks them, and then hits them. It's just you had a name like Blazing Swallow Kick, especially with some of the super anime stuff we've seen. This is honestly super disappointing. It's you didn't even need the firecrackers on the ground. It really didn't do anything. The kick didn't really do anything. All that happened was you sliced their head, and they didn't even come off. So, all in all, just a really disappointing execution. It talks a big game and doesn't back it up in the slightest. So, Musha, I can't say I'm that sympathetic towards you because you're just kind of not an interesting character, I'm sorry to say. But you, unfortunately, are the big loser in this round, and as a result, the prank is that no one's going to play you. Alright, so now we're going to move on. Instead of doing the top 3 executions, I'm actually going to talk overall about the factions. I'll save the top 3 for the very end. So, who do I think had the weakest overall executions? Well, despite the fact that the Knights took 2 of the 3 worst spots, I'm actually going to give Wulin the weakest. I mean, it's a bit unfair because the Wulin are, they just have less members, which means it's harder to grade them in general. But I would say overall, all of their executions are average to below average, with maybe the exception of Jangjun. I guess, spoiler alert, yeah, none of the Wulin are in the top 3. But, yeah, I'm going to say that they were the worst. I'm going to say Knights were the second worst. I mean, I don't even have to go into the others because, they have 2 of the 3 worst executions in the game, in my opinion. So, obviously, it's going to drag them way down. Samurai, I'm going to give second place overall. A lot of their executions were kind of just average, bland. A couple were okay. There was one real big exception, and we'll be talking about that when we get into the top 3. But overall, there wasn't anything offensively bad, but there just wasn't enough to really cause them to soar ahead of the pack. Unfortunately, that cannot be said for the Vikings, who, just like the faction war, are constantly winning in the execution departments too. They have consistently had some pretty awesome executions over the many updates, and this is no exception. They have just very strong executions across the board, in my opinion. Maybe one of them is like not that great, and the rest are probably above average. So overall, I would say that they, as a faction, won out. But what really matters is who is the number one battle royale winner chicken dinner of the executions. So let's go and start talking about that. Let's talk about the 3 best executions this time around, in my humble opinion. So, in third place, I'm actually going to give third place to what might surprise a few people, and that is Gladiators' new execution, Fun and Roses. They throw a bolus, they chuck the trident, everyone celebrates, they give a little quick bow, and they pull the spear out. I love the aesthetic. Bolus was a weapon used in Gladiatorial Arena. I love that the enemy is just completely defenseless as they line up their shot. I also like a lot of these executions where they throw their weapon. Just typically has a lot of weight and viscera to it. And the whole roses and the bow thing, again, very much fitting of the Gladiators aesthetic of a arena combatant. So I feel like for the character, that's a very strong execution. It fits them very well. So that's why I'm giving it third place. But as much as, while I do give that third place, I got to be honest with you, number 2 and number 1 in this regard are, they are leagues above all the rest. Like, they're in another level compared to every other execution here. And I think it's very debatable. You could say that my number 2 should have been my number 1 and my number 1 should have been my number 2. They're both kind of close, and depending on your preference, I could certainly see flipping either one. It was a bit of a debate for me. In second place, I am going to have to go with the Raiders' new execution. It's a Norse Trap. This is some straight up Dead by Daylight, Trapper Mori, just horror survival game nonsense awesomeness. Like, he smacks them, pulls out the bear trap, loads it up, sticks it over their head, and twists their neck as just a final, like, just to make sure. That is insane. It is over the top. They have a little white flash at the end that I really like to really add to that kind of, like, horror killer vibe. Like, this is, like, the aesthetic behind it is something we don't really see in For Honor. This idea of just, like, literally a horror vibe is really neat. I love the whole thing. It's really, really good. And again, I can certainly understand why you would think that this should be the best execution of the set. But unfortunately, the one thing I got to deduct from it is because it, like many of the executions this time around, it uses a prop and some, like, special visual effects. I feel like a lot of the novelty of it might wear off as time goes on. It'll still be pretty cool, but it might, like, once you've seen it a few different times and several people have made videos of it, it just might lose some of its luster, which is why I chose to make it second place. First place is one of the only ones that didn't use props, and that is Musha's brand new execution, Head Cutter. I mean, it's just beautiful. It is slick, it is simple, and it's just really creative. He catches them with an upward slice to pop their head up. He runs it through with his sword and then chops the head off, and then just looks at their sword like, ugh, look at the head on his sword like, ugh. Like, oh god, didn't think that would happen. Ugh. And then just chucks it to the side. See, that's really awesome. I love the just quick, violent nature of it. It's got a good cadence. The very concept of it is humorous and really fun to look at. And unlike the others, which, like I said, rely on, like, special effects and props, this one just is Aramusha's character, and it just uses sword. So I feel like this one is just going to, it's going to age better than a lot of the others, and it's just going to be one of those executions. It's just going to be a really solid one for him moving forward. Like, I feel if you become an Aramusha main, this is just going to be one of those executions that you're probably always going to want and never going to feel too bad that you bought. And so with that, we have rounded up my execution review. I would like to thank anyone who watched this video, and congratulations to Aramusha for being the #1 Battle Royale execution winner. I know that, not a lot goes your way out here, buddy, but you can stand tall knowing that, hey, at least you're the coolest looking one. Alright, everybody, I appreciate anyone who came this far. I will check you out later. Hopefully this Jormungandr looks pretty dope, and I guess I'll just end the video.